central to the program. Of course, I was helping the priest. In our group, helping each other, sharing the load, emotionally and physically, was essential. I still like to make the distinction, however, between serving and helping. Many might say that is semantics, but I think it goes deeper than that. Eventually, the Brazilian project grew, and my job changed into more administration and fundraising. However, I did not feel detached from the residents and the therapeutic staff. I was still serving them. I admit I had missed the fun of teaching them how to cook and garden and observing their progress. But the satisfaction I felt at serving this community as a whole was deep. From that time on, serving has been a conscious part of my spiritual life. Volunteering takes on special meaning when I'm working toward a common good and contributing to a better world, however small it may appear. That I support my community in some measure, creating an opportunity for change, keeps me alive. I know that also probably sounds dramatic, but it's true. It gives me energy. I first volunteered on Whidbey Island at WIN, Whidbey Island Nourishes, joining the small team of volunteers in our UU kitchen, making burritos and trail mix for families who are hungry, until the pandemic halted our weekly efforts. As I rolled the burritos and folded the little packages of trail mix, I would imagine the satisfaction of the recipients who were serving these people. They were making a better community. None of my volunteer efforts in the past few years has involved a major time commitment. But each project has given me an opportunity to serve, and that is what is compelling. I know I can make a difference. In this time of pandemic, I looked for a way to participate. I wanted to do something, but what? I kept thinking. Then one day, after we all finally knew we were supposed to be wearing masks, I made myself one. Then I made one for my neighbor. Within days, I was sewing masks and giving them to my friends. Soon I discovered a group called the DIYers, the do-it-yourselfers of Whidbey Island, who sew masks, which are then donated all over the island. To this day, we've made, I think, 13,000. Working side by side with others is also important to me and is fundamental to my reward. Yes, let's don't forget, there are rewards to volunteering and serving others. It's fun to work side by side with friends, talking about our past experiences, creating deeper friendships, and that is part of what draws me in. Just as I daydream about students eating burritos as I roll them, I imagine the masks I'm sewing being used to protect against the virus. It's never tiresome. I don't know most of the people I sew with or the people who wear the masks, and that's not what matters. It's the experience of serving, of increasing, even in the smallest way, the common good. That is the joy of serving.
Thank you, Jane. It is important to remember and honor those who have taught us by their words and by their lives what it means to be of service. Gene will share his reflection on offering service to our wider community.
I saw my father as a role model in service. In our area of southern Minnesota, we had numerous elderly farm wives who had become widowed. Dad had known many of them since his youth. When they needed light roof repair, a room painted, or a driver to take them to a doctor visit, they called him and he helped them out, maybe for a very small payment, but more likely just for the pleasure of a social chat over coffee and cookies. He did it out of friendship and love, and for the satisfaction of helping. This This service helped give meaning to his life. It was an extension of who he was. It was an expression of who he was. As I approached retirement decades ago, I wondered, what was my life's purpose in retirement? Hobbies are good, but do they give purpose? I decided I might consider volunteering for service to my community. This made me think of my dad, my role model. I would look at what I enjoy doing, what I find easy to do, and see if I can do those things in support of my community. Don't force myself to do stuff that's difficult for me, because those things probably will not turn out well anyway. When Eileen and I retired and moved here in 2010, I looked for opportunities to volunteer. I was an Army forward observer in Vietnam and a career mathematician for the Department of Defense. These were possible experiences and strengths I felt I could offer. Working with veterans, I volunteer with the Veterans Resource Center, attending weekly support group meetings and driving a van to the Seattle VA hospital. Working with middle and high school kids, I've taught summer math camps, math Olympiad teams for competitions, and human sexuality for teens. Here at UU, I've been on the membership committee and the building and grounds committee. The UU building and grounds committee especially, and this is where I'm putting my plug in, the UU building and grounds committee requires lots of volunteers, even now in the pandemic. A small crew of Dennis Holzer, John Long, Warner Grunert, and I made repairs to our roadside sign just 2 weeks ago, all with careful social distancing and masking. Julie Hogan continues to weed the flower beds. Richard Hayes, Dick Hayes, waters every Thursday. Paul Belanger sharpened and replaced the lawnmower blades. I admire others I see being of service. Judy Kaplan, tutoring marginalized children, and her work with Caring Connections. Jane Hayes, making dozens of masks to give away. Gea Bunbretta and Chelsea Romberg, making burritos for Whidbey Island Nourishers. Win. David Kaufman, urging civility first. Donita Crosby, singing for people who are dying. Kimberly Sarah, Diane and Gary Piazan, and all the folks who work for social, environmental, and economic justice. Robert Steele, Mavis Kaufman, Opus, and the technicals behind each Sunday service. These are just a few examples. I know I'm missing many who should be recognized. Serving in these ways, these folks have helped to nurture our UU community and the larger Whidbey community. This gives them satisfaction and many friends. It gives the feeling of full membership, gives the feeling of ownership in our communities. It makes Whidbey Island our true home. And I feel I follow in the steps of my role model, my dad. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean, for sharing so many ways the ripples of service from our congregation spread out to bless the lives of so many people in our wider community. Joanne will share her reflections on the gifts of service we offer to support one another.
Before I begin my own reflections on service, I want to acknowledge events that I consider one of the greatest services to our democracy. Of course, it began much earlier than Abigail Adams writing to her husband, "Remember the ladies," but I'm acknowledging Seneca Falls 1848 the first women's rights convention called by Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott, and the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, and also on February 14th, the 100th anniversary of the League of Women Voters, begun at the same time. Some of the women who began that movement in the United States did not live to see its completion in August of 1920, 7+ decades after they had begun the search for ratification. On thinking about what I might say about this topic, I recalled a time when my husband and I were indeed in service, named appropriately or not, alternative service, since that time when alternative hadn't yet taken on new meaning as far as facts go. But perhaps it was indeed an alternative reality. We had a Downton Abbey kind of relationship with the managing staff of a conference center in Oregon. We lived at the conference center where we were employed, minimally reimbursed, but constantly on call. And that is just about summarizing what service means. Little or no expectation of reward, but a constancy and willingness or duty to serve. But on the other hand, and forgive me if this might seem all about me, of course, I'm only human, great excuse for a lot of behaviors, right? I appreciate praise and recognition and maybe even adulation. For example, my sister knows that I am the self-appointed queen of my own universe, and she gave me a mug that reads, "It's good to be queen." But when any over-exuberant praise does come to me, then I'm uncomfortably unnerved and always feel it is undeserved. I truly feel that persons do what they choose to do for their own fulfillment. Now I am called to serve the communities and organizations that over the years I've willingly joined and have served when others cannot or will not. That means to me that if you have a talent and you know of it, then you must offer that talent. At least that is the way it was expected in my family, as it seemed to me when I was growing up. See a need, step up to help, or even lead the way. I saw this in my father and mother all my life. They were married at ages 17 and 18. And volunteering in their small Nebraska community and their country church, and later in organizations and the church when they moved to Washington from rural Nebraska. My mother was fond of saying that all her children all amounted to something, meaning that they served as a minister, business managers, teachers, IT technician, school superintendent. Who serves with me? As it happens, so very many people, especially in this church community. Think of the members of our board of directors and all those committees that keep UUCWI functioning. Those who mow the lawn, manage the recycling, keep our building clean, offer gifts of music and art. Take food to those who are ill, teach the children, step in to help with functions like the auction, the concerts, the memorial services. And don't forget our professional staff, the Reverend Emily Melcher, Stephanie Chia, and David Edwards. On this island, there are more operating social programs and nonprofits per capita than I think in most places on earth. And think about the larger world. I know I have a rather long timeline of giving to service organizations, but I am insignificant compared to the real saints of the world. The ones who go to work literally to put food on their tables, those who teach, protect, put out fires, both real ones and otherwise, those who provide food, clothing, shelter, legal advice, and open their homes to those in need, serve as parents, and on and on and on. There's always a need, and thankfully there are some who are happy in serving to fill those needs. Has service changed now that the virus has changed our world? Definitely, yes. But without putting too much Pollyanna into this, I look around at how ordinary people have stepped up to make changes, speak out for change, provide big gives and small ones, just so that more of us can survive, literally. And also make this crisis something that we learn from to make a better place to live. Yes, service is part of my spiritual practice. My sharing time on Sundays with the children is a given for my own spiritual growth and nourishment. And the rise of others, Eileen, Mavis, Emily, to nurture how this program is delivered now is, if you'll pardon the expression, if it's not something you would say, a godsend. I'm grateful for the time spent with the young ones and the helpers who've nudged me in the right direction when I was temporarily putting it on hold, and for the support of our church community. It is a privilege to glimpse all that hope for the future in all of those young faces. They and their parents who share the time with their children have given me so much more than I can offer to them. So my final word, go forth and serve, friends. It's the gift that keeps on giving. We invite you to enjoy the video, which reminds us of some of the many ways we offer our hearts, our hands, and our voices in service and in blessing. The music, Bless the World, is written by Elizabeth Norton and sung by Mavis Kaufman, Kate Shepard, and Ruth Richards.
Thank you, Jane, Jean, and Joanne, for your service and for your thoughtful reflections for the many ways our community offers blessings of service. Many of the ways we've used our hands, hearts, and voices in service as shared in these reflections and these pictures are not open to us in this time of continuing social distancing. Now it's the time to tap into our creativity and recognize that being of service to ourselves, to one another, and to our wider community is really a spiritual practice. I've learned that holding service as a spiritual practice of giving and receiving rather than a duty or an obligation changes my experience. Service offered from a feeling of I should or someone's got to do it can feel like an effort or a duty. Service offered from a heart of generosity feels nourishing and often joyful. When our service is given as part of our spiritual practice, both giver and receiver are blessed. Although individually, we may not change the trajectory of our world, every act of kindness from a generous heart, every practical assistance from caring hands, every voice raised against injustice blesses someone's life. If you remember nothing else from all that has been shared this service, I hope you will remember this. However you are called to be of service, how you do what you do is as important or perhaps more important than what you do. I'm going to repeat that. How you do what you do is perhaps as important or maybe even more important than what you do. How will you use your caring heart, your strong hands, your clear voice to bless and serve the world? Ken Merrill offers his generous gift of service and blessing with this song, These Hands by David Gunning and George Cannon. Thank you, Ken. And thank you to each of you for the gifts of service as we together create this beloved shared ministry. As I extinguish the chalice and you extinguish your candle at home, let us say an enthusiastic yes to life. Let us practice being of service. Do more than belong. Participate. Do more than be fair. Be kind. Do more than dream. Work with an open heart, with willing hands, with a strong voice for justice. Let us go now and be of blessing and in service. Amen and blessed be. For those of you who are staying on for our coffee hour today,